My name is Tracilyn, and I've been sharing my life story. Well, originally, I started sharing my life story back in like 2013. I am from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and due to circumstances, I ended up living out here in Dayton, Ohio since 2009, 2010, off and on. And recently, I got an apartment in 2014 when I did not have enough time to figure out details on a location to reside. With that being said, this is not necessarily my life story, but it is a video sharing with you various details of circumstances in my life from 2014 to 2018. I made a list of some key points that have been pestering me, I guess you could say. Some subject matters that have bugged me for quite some time. And I've noticed that throughout my life, I stayed dominantly focused on things that I perceived were very painful to me, and I could not stop focusing on them. It was like my mind wrapped around these things that I perceived as pain, and that was the only thing consuming my brain, which made me extremely high levels of depression. When I got involved into reading scripture, it helped me to start seeing things much differently, and I realized that most of what I've been taught was slowly starting to acknowledge inside of me that was not in alignment with what I just read in the Bible. When I couldn't get other people to become in agreement with what the Bible was sharing with me, or so I perceived it, it put me into a very lonely place, a helpless place. And another reason why a helpless place was there is because the government we think that we elect for our better interest is not really the government for us. They are people. And when you're dealing with people, there's a larger portion within them that is not for you at any given point. That's what I've realized. And as far as explaining the details in that, maybe you'll pick some of it up along the way. But I would like to say to the president, to the governor, to the mayor, to all the city councils, you're all a bunch of assholes. Because I should have known what to do in my time of need. I'm entitled to that information. I should have a place that I can actually go to and say, I need my entitlement so I can survive and don't need to be homeless or hungry or living with other people. Look at my old house. Do you see it? I used to cry up in that bedroom. Every day, just about, most times, at least in the beginning. And it was all because I didn't know what to do to stay alive. Well, I had some of my basic needs met, but it was through one person. Now, one person who helped me off of the bridge by saying, if you come out here to Dayton, Ohio, I will help you. I can't help you if you're not out here. And I'm here to tell you, depending on your circumstances, who knows what you need to do? In my opinion, technically I should have been able to go to my county office and say, I'm here to pick up my entitlement. I need to get it started ASAP because I should not be homeless. Okay? When I was staying here in Ohio, what I learned is I don't know where to begin. There's nobody for me to actually go. Who do I go to talk to about the other possibilities of entitlement, of how I'm going to live? I should not have to live with one person taking care of me. By the way, my hands are able. I was able. My heart was able and willing. My heart up here was willing. But nobody would hire me because evidently I'm a freak because I'm a transsexual female. Maybe you're going through this, maybe you're not. I would like to say if you're going through it, there's a good chance that you shouldn't be upset, and you should realize that most likely you wouldn't want to work there anyway. If it is a situation where you really wanted to work somewhere, then What you need is an emotional support group, a good attorney. You can apply legal action against them. From what I've learned is really working for other people sucks. I'd rather be doing life in a manner that I don't have to serve people the way that I've been taught to serve them. I've learned that it is best to serve people once you first serve your own heart. A lot of details to explain in doing that. But if you ever hear teachers, preachers on television, on the YouTube, and they're playing out telling you, stop being selfish and get your mind off yourself, let me tell you something. You want to make sure you disconnect from that person because she is screwing up your head and creating a mental sickness. If you actually apply their teachings into your life, you will find out you will not get anywhere. You will get near death many times over. Which kind of makes me wonder if that isn't why a lot of people in the transsexual community don't end up being what? They commit suicide, right? They're very suicidal. I was very suicidal. And that all started because why? Because I was not taught properly about personal identity, and therefore I felt I was different, which I knew my whole life, than what I've been taught, not from other people. We are all transitional existences. We just feel that we're outcast and we're different because people are in bondage to a very unhealthy mental sickness. And it's created by many means of how we collect information with our five senses and fall into agreement with this is the idea of the way that human culture should be. If we look around the planet, we will find out that many humans live differently. With that being said, welcome to America, where I thought we were supposed to be able to live freely and equality and what? In peace with our neighbors. Understand this. I can't tell you if your vote counts when you vote for, elect a politician. But know this, that politician can't in no way be for you 100% of the time. There's a portion within that politician that can be for you maybe in moments or moments for the life that is inside of you. But God would never give that much power to one man or a group of men or people to be for your life. And therefore, anyone who has anything but God as a leader doesn't have much of a leader at all in most situations. Something to think about. From everything I've been through and my acknowledgement, I have a lot less respect for the people who took leadership positions in our country and never informed me of the things I've come to learn, especially when I was reaching out for them. Test ministries and see when you send them an email asking for help, if they're all the best they're due for you is we are praying for you, know that that is a very lowly way of replying to you by saying, there's nothing we're willing to do for you. Most of the leaders in our country should be jailed. And by the way, if they're true leaders, they should volunteer their position, especially when they see the needs in the city streets, on the sidewalks, in the homes that are all over the place, homeless people all over the place. Where are people with heart that will do it for free? Governor, mayors. Let's see. Okay, so I'm glad I got that part out. I don't want to say I don't like politicians, but can I just say that the people's government is not God's government. God's government is in all people and all life. It's all. So when people take a position, a group of people, and they say, we're the government of the United States of America, know this, they're flat out lying to you because nobody can be the government of the United States of America, but only God can. And God uses people, right? Because that's how we're all alive. God lives in people. Do you know that God is Word? This is why they keep God supposedly out of schools. And you'll find out maybe later years that, they could never do that because they can't keep God out of anything. There was a gentleman not too long ago that in the apartment I live in, he lived differently. I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, or I don't want to judge the situation. How's that? I don't want to judge this situation, but he was evicted from the building that I live in. When that happened, it reminded me of this house I lived at. And over here, more to the right of the other driveway, that's in Huber Heights, by the way. Also Dayton. I remember on the door, right here, there was a piece of paper, that simply said there was like 2 or 3 weeds in the front yard, that if they were not taken care of, there was going to be a fine sent to the house. A few $100s maybe more. I think it was a couple $100s. Now also, while I'd be laying out, one time over here is where I lay. I used to lay out over here on the side to get sun on my body when I was sun tanning. And one time I was laying over here, and an officer shows up, and he mentions to me that other people had given him a call and let him know that there was somebody laying out naked. There was somebody naked laying in the yard. So he wanted to check to see if everything was all right. Not only did he do that, I was in a bikini, by the way. Not only did he do that, he mentioned for me to possibly lay on the other side of the house. In other words, where no one else could see me. Do you think this had to do with the fact that I am a very open transsexual female? Do you think the officer was overstepping his bounds? Being that that was the property owner's yard. You think that cop had any right even walking into the yard? Well, I realized that when it comes down to somebody's weeds being in the yard, or somebody laying in the sun in the front yard, as well as some other things that I've done in my life, I realized that that will be the guilty party. When you go down the street, like I just showed a video a few days ago, and it's filled with all kinds of potholes, and basically it's destroyed, and and you see abandoned buildings all over a city. The Hara Arena, for instance, is abandoned. I don't know what they're doing with that, but you have all these buildings throughout Ohio that are abandoned, and they don't safely put fences around them, or they don't secure the means in case children or other people would make way through the property, and therefore hurting themselves, possibly, maybe even worse. They have what is called the open and obvious law. I mentioned about this open and obvious law because I was really upset in the fact that I went to Kroger's on Siebenthaler Avenue, and when I stepped off of their parking lot and onto their sidewalk, I smacked my head on it because I did not see their sign, which technically, in my opinion, by Harrison Township regulations, they should make sure that their sign height off of the ground level is at least at a reasonable height for pedestrians to be able to walk under and stuff. With that being said, I realize that whenever it comes to something that I feel is in favor for life, even laying in the yard, 2 little weeds, you will find out that the city council is more of your enemy than they are your friends. When it comes to how somebody lives within their own apartment or what have you, it's the exact same thing, okay? Why I'm saying this is because I have been driving on the road in front of our apartment for almost 4 years now, and it irritates me because the car I have might only be the only car that I have for the rest of my life because of all the rejection I got when I went to get jobs, okay? So that I could, establish some form of life for myself that is meaningful to me. And then I found out in the long run that my privacy has been being invaded, most likely my whole entire life, and that people in the mainstream music industry, the people you've been hearing on the radio for 30 or 40 years, have access to using people like myself that have the ability, meaning talent of some sort, songs, if you're a painter, if you whatever you're into as an artist, a writer, they use them as resources to do whatever it is that they do. And thus explaining to me why extremely talented people I have met in my life are not the ones that are on the radio today versus the people that have been around for years, and technically they're really not as great, nowhere near as great as they used to be. In my opinion, very strongly. I explained all this stuff on my YouTube video channel, and I'm looking forward to getting this done because I didn't want my life being consumed with talking about people like Bon Jovi and Miley Cyrus and stuff like that. I finally understand there is an extremely corrupted family, if that's what you want to call it. Why you would pay tickets for people like that to go or contribute to their life is beyond me. I really would love to sit down and talk more details again sometime, explaining why it's foolish to help people like that in their own life endeavors when they seriously would not give you the time of day. They would rather take from you than to offer any kind of assistance. It's soon going to be that time of year. Isn't that gorgeous? I had a hard time with snow, I guess ever since like 4th grade. You know, I just finally got tired of the cold and the gray skies that we have every winter. And it lasted all the way up. I mean, look at this picture here. That's the way that my time was ever since I came out to Ohio. I don't know what was up with that, but the skies were always gray, so were the trees like that. It felt like most of the time, a majority of the time, it was dreary out. Well, what happened to me like last year is I had a revelation over it, and I finally started to be okay with everything except for the cold. I really don't like the cold too much. It's hard for me to handle, and as well, I don't like wearing layers and layers and layers of clothing to try to stay warm. I'm looking to defeat this a little bit by making my cold winter storm video in the beginning of this year coming up in 2019, if we do get snow. Hopefully I'll be able to do that. But here's the thing, that's what started off my endeavors when I came out here to Ohio. I looked out the window when I was at my girlfriend's, Catherine's, who was also a transsexual female, and when I opened up the curtain and I saw it snow, I cried my eyes out, because I was hoping to move to California, sunny California. And unfortunately, ever since I've been here, I tried, out of that house, to move several times. When I realized California wasn't going to work, I kept trying and insisting on moving down to Nashville so I could network with other songwriters. I did it here with an NSAI group. I wrote a lot of songs in that house as well. Well, actually, I wrote a few songs in that house. Most of my songs were written at Catherine's apartment when I first came here. But I continued on in that front bedroom in 2010. And up until I moved out, just about. So it was like for 3 or 4 years I wrote songs sporadically on that property. And I loved the house. That wasn't the problem. I didn't really care for the trees that much. These are the trees that objects used to fall and they'd land on the roof of my car. And they would put, on my sunroof and the body of my car, and they put lots of dents into it. So that kind of sucked. Okay, here we go. I don't know if votes count. What do you think? Do you think your vote counts? Here's what I think. I think that if there's 2 people, one, and just say this is another person, so you got 2 people. I think that they're kind of lined up for the general masses in their minds to acknowledge that there are 2 leaders, but I think that there are people who have the means electronically to communicate with their minds. And I also have a very strong sensation that they do this to the general masses. In other words, they can literally, like we're computeroids or something, and they can literally manipulate the thoughts in our head and persuade us in various ways to get us to do different things. If they are not getting what they want, I believe that they will put the pressure on, because I witnessed this when busking on the street, that they will actually start appearing and talking to you through other people, giving you subtle hints that they're watching you very close in an attempt, in my opinion, to try to scare you, like scare tactics, to get you to consider doing what it is that they're playing with your mind to do, so to speak. And I got to meet one of these people, at least one of these people. And if you got to see what these people look like, you would say to yourself, I can't believe somebody who looks like that is playing mind games with me like that, and our wonderful government isn't informing us about it and doing something about it. Don't be so sure that what they say, the people behind the scenes, isn't literally people who have the means by laser or other electronic means to get into our heads, and therefore dominating and creating an illusion of life that we're supposed to be living in alignment with them, and that they are not, like, their ultimate goal is not to minimize the life of the human race. Again, I would say in the Bible there are people who have lived hundreds and hundreds of years, but now it seems to be there might be some more people that are living into their 80s, 90s, and hundreds again. So something doesn't seem right, in my opinion. We don't know how long all of this has been going on. What's in alignment with the truth? What do you think? Do you think your politicians care? Why do you think that a dominancy of movies and television shows and cartoons are aimed at more violence and distractions versus educational information that is very beneficial into living a beautiful life and fulfilling your own personal heart's desires, which, when that's being done, that's the best way to serve humanity and the entire universe from there on out. You'd start to realize how funny comedians are, for instance, in television shows, if they even had a little bit of acknowledgement of what's going on, and they're still comedians in that television show. Intelligence looks at that in observation. Have you ever heard somebody say to you, you did it to yourself? I'm going to be the one to tell you, you can't possibly do it to yourself. When you're a child, you're raised in a household, you're given a name, you're declared a sex, okay? And who knows if they put a chip in you from the get-go. When you live your life, your parents or whoever is raising you, and what you're exposed to is what your five senses is collecting data. It's also collecting data off of the television and radio and all the other electronic devices. You're looking around you and you're thinking, you're falling into agreement that this is a way of culture of life that we are to adapt to. And what you find out then is you are forced to go to a school system that already tells you that we keep God out of the school system, meaning it's best to keep it out. That can't be done. So already you're being lied to about that. What they're doing is programming you with information they want to program you with. Okay? When you go through the school system, they keep telling you need more schooling in order to get educated properly, to be trained for some kind of worldly position of an occupation. By the time you get there, and a lot of times that occupation might not be there, or it might, but we can go on and on and on with this. Basically, in my opinion, you got the heart, your true heart, and if you were to be guided in sitting in the life bed, if you will, of yourself, the life that was intended to you, and you were to make all the choices in alignment with who you are, your heart is the dominancy of your brain, which is not yet developed by any means, I would say, in most situations when we're first born into our family. But if we were to have true leadership, most likely we would not go to a public school. We would most certainly receive the basics of training so that we could communicate and connect with the other humans here in our country. But most likely we would not be going to a school and being sitting beside people simply because of an alphabet. All the A's, B's, and C's are in this class, and et cetera, et cetera. They would most certainly categorize us by interests, what we're interested in. Let me see. Therefore, we would already be surrounded by people who have similar compatibilities of interest. And then we would be able to enjoy life a lot more and grow together. And through the years, you just continue to keep doing it. In other words, that starts to become more of your family. The people that you dominantly are surrounded by, they're your friend, your brothers and your sisters and your mothers. It just starts to, you kind of not grow apart from other people, but if they don't have similar passions and interests of yours, I mean, just simply wanting to live in a hot weather climate sometimes is enough to get one person. If the whole family isn't going to go with you that you're at, you're in a hot weather climate now, and now as you're living your passions and your desires of the things you really want to do, then the people that are around you and dominantly in your life, that becomes your family and friends, right? It's not that there isn't challenges, but I mean, I would assume that now all of a sudden you still have your other family and they're in your thought, but you're living in the now, so to speak, with where you are. So when people say that you did it to yourself, I heard that when I was on the streets, and this guy was sending me messengers, and they literally told me when I was in Los Angeles on the boardwalk, there were people, I don't know, are they still there? Do me a favor, if you do video and you're in Los Angeles on the boardwalk, scan the beaches and show me, are there still homeless there? Like they need home, they need shelter, they need food, they need water and stuff? What do you think should be done with that? Because I was standing there and I was observing them, and I heard that to be careful because some of them, not all, some of the people that were there when I was there a few years ago were infested with lice from being outside and stuff. Now that was from somebody else that was familiar with the area. So I appreciate that. Simply because, like, I live here in Dayton, Ohio, and my bed is infested with bed bugs, and I'm going to let people know that probably for the rest of my life. Be careful if you move to Dayton, Ohio, because that is something that I personally would not like to deal with for the rest of my existence. It's pretty much, there has to be something done about it. Just for that reason alone, I would want to move out of Dayton, Ohio. That's where I was standing when somebody walked up to me and he said, they did it to themselves, Tracilyn. And he said it with a knowing, like he knew that it bugged my heart to see it. Okay? And I had to pause for a minute, and I was thinking to myself in my head and thereafter, why would people do that to themselves? Nobody would want to do that to themselves. What ends up happening is a lot of times people say what? When you are in a home like this, right? Up in the room, and you are crying because you can't get your needs met? Well, you have a house, don't you? There's somebody giving you food, right? Well, that's some of it. That's a good start. But for the most part, you weren't taught right, and you don't really understand. The only thing you understand is you don't want to go back to a life you once had, by any means. But you want to make steps moving forward, but you don't know how to take those steps. When that happens, and you want to in your heart to do something, but you can't make the step because you don't know how to do it, the only thing you know is you need money, and nobody's letting you get a job, and nobody's telling you go down to the local county office and get your entitlement, which means you might have to get welfare, or you might have to get Social Security for a disability problem, depression. You will have a bipolar personality disorder, I'm telling you that. You will be angry when you find out the things that I've learned. Your school system, the people you think are your government, it's pretty scary once you find all this stuff out, and it will traumatize you why they would not inform the general public. By law, they should have to inform the general public, this is what you do so you don't end up in Los Angeles infested with lice. We can't make you go to school. We can't make you get a job. We can't tell you you gotta be homeless because you refuse to submit to our unhealthy demands. God is everything, which means that what? God is also the government. And God lives in and through humans, its words, in our brain and beyond. And there's a lot of little detailed information that I have learned over the years from being in that bedroom and laying around. And it didn't go without me studying books, reading psychology, the power of the mind. I went through years and years of study. By law, if I had a good attorney, I should be able to sue the entire school system and our government for not educating me properly. I shouldn't have had to self-educate myself for many years after going to school for even 6 or 7 years, some people will say. If you ever hear Donald Trump tell the general public that people on welfare should by law have to volunteer X amount of time in order to be on welfare, tell Donald Trump that Tracilyn said, fuck you. By God's law, no one should be forcing anybody to do something like that. In fact, that's why God gave us free will. That's entitlement. We look down on people because they're on welfare, don't we? We look down on them because they're on forms of Social Security and disability, don't we? Yes, we do. Now, let's be honest. We all do. Why? Because that's what we've been taught, is to look down on everybody who is on some form of what we call assistance. But if you really knew that they were scared to tell you, well, people are entitled to what they got. Money, food, a safe place to live. I could go on and on. The bottom line is we would all look at things differently. And guess what? The very small percentage of little chubby wubbies with tiny little penises, they wouldn't have the life they do, which is sitting around torturing the masses, because that's what they enjoy doing. Playing head games with people. This is what I've come to learn. Nobody does it to theirself. Not until they become intelligent. At least some level of intelligence. Because intelligence is a long ways away from us. Okay, we're like little dust particles in a chip bag, a little crumb. And it really saddens you when you start to become a little bit more intelligent than you were the year before. And you realize, I should have never ever had to come off the bridge. I should have never been on that bridge, by the way. And I'm going to start dealing with this next year. When I call the school system, when I call and speak to my psychologist in the mental hospital, I should have never even had to come out to Dayton, Ohio, to be honest with you. Am I glad I did? For some reasons, I'm glad I'm here in Ohio, and for some reasons, I'm kind of upset about it, to be honest with you. I'm trying to heal and get over it. I have a plan to move to Columbus, Ohio now by choice. And I need the support that I already have now that I know what to work with. And now I can take the steps through observation of Columbus, getting comfortable and acquainted with a bigger city, and then selecting the places I would want to move and then applying for them. And chances are I may have to argue about it. I hope not. I want to get what I want, Joyce Myers. See, I'm learning how to do it. Your teachings kept me in that bedroom crying my eyes out. It kept me in a state of paralyzed. And why was that? Because I don't know what to do. I'm trusting God, Joyce Myers, and God is everything. And I've learned you don't trust everything. I have learned do not trust everything. Who knows what's going to happen? Did you ever see people going in abandoned buildings? I like to watch people do that. I mean, I watch shows. I watch their YouTube channels. I watch their videos. I enjoy watching some people and listening to them talk. If you're out there and you ever see my videos and you've seen my comment, then you're one of those people I enjoy watching. With that being said, I don't want to say any words that would cast any kind of fear in people, but because of things I've done in my own life, I personally would not walk into these buildings. Because it's not about fear, it's about knowing what could happen in these facilities that people walk in. There's all kinds of possibilities. And what takes a mindset for somebody to simply walk into there with the confidence that they have when showing everything is enjoyed and appreciated by me. because that's something I would never do. Okay, so I'm thankful for people who do show things like that. But I get upset mainly because our city councils and stuff let property just sit around abandoned. You know, the banks put pressure on people. The city puts pressure on people to pay their taxes, to pay their mortgage, you name it. Start cutting off their electricity, start cutting off their cable. There's all this cruelty that they force onto humanity. Then when the people move out, the property just sits there anyway. Well, guess what? That's a property somebody like me could have received. So I didn't have to be homeless or live with some psychopath that every time I didn't do what he wanted me to do. By the way, when I was watching Joyce Myers, she was always teaching about not being selfish with your life. When I didn't do what he wanted me to do, then I was kicked out. And then I was homeless, and then I had to return to being an escort because our government didn't inform me what I should do in my time of need, so I do not have to be what the world calls a prostitute. By the way, it's not a prostitute. It's usually the people who enforce the laws who are prostitutes. In fact, many people will tell you that every human existence in life is what? Prostitute. Maybe all life forms are prostitutes. Because it's whenever you go against your own, what? Your heart is up here, the dominancy of who you are. Whenever you go against that, you're prostituting yourself if you're doing it for some reason. Well, good luck in this life trying to line everything up that every choice you make is in exactly what you want here. Okay, you would need what? Money for free. You need freedom is what you need, not money. You need freedom. But in America, money, you pretty much get, I would say most people, in the spirit of Jesus Christ, you could get pretty much anything you want to get with it. So when people go to work and stuff, they're not working for the money. They really want the freedom to live their life. And in most situations, that's when life is lost for years and forgotten about. And you have very little money. And in your time of need of getting something, you don't have enough money. And then people start using credit cards, Joyce Myers. And then she'll teach you, if God wanted you to have it, you know, you'd have it. That's BS. God does want you to have your heart's desires fulfilled, but he gave you free will, Joyce Myers. Of course God wants you to have it. That's why it's in your heart. And it's our job to believe this. Because what you believe is what's real for you. Even if it's not real for anyone else, believe it or not. Okay, I'm gonna switch this over because we already used up one of the storages on the camera. So here we go. You hear the garbage can out front? Garbage truck. I forgot I want to talk about that a little bit later. If you see this message and you have not heard about a garbage truck in any of my other videos, you have to write me and say, where's that video at? Because that is something I've been listening to for over 4 years. I'm looking for a beautiful home, similar, much bigger. Obviously that's like a bedroom, but a home with a beautiful view would be really nice.